Good morning, StockTwits Nation. This is the Daily Rip Live. We are back in New York after being in San Francisco for a couple days last week at the Gateway Conference. I am here with familiar face Michael Parekh, AI and tech investor. Hello there. And special guest Amandae Baey, head of IR at VinFast Auto, a very fast-moving and exciting EV company out of Vietnam. That's ticker VFS. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to see both of you. And here's how it's going to go today, guys. So we got Amanda for the first 10 to 15. If you guys aren't familiar with VinFast, really exciting company in the EV space out of Vietnam. So we're going to learn a little bit about them and their plans for growth and expansion. And then, as always, Michael and I will riff about a variety of things. Maybe we'll talk about AI hallucinations. Maybe we'll talk about Apple. Michael always comes with incredible insights from his longstanding career in tech analysis of some of these biggest companies that we have in that space. But let's kick off with Amanda and Michael. I have questions for Amanda, but feel free. I know you're very familiar with this space, so pop in there whenever. And I see in my notes I'm not supposed to talk about the Buffalo Bills. My football team won last night in against all odds, so I'm not going to talk about it, even though I just did. So let's start off, Amanda. For people not familiar, tell us a little bit about VinFast.
Hey, Katie, it's good to be on this show. I'm actually dialing in from Hong Kong, where unsurprisingly, the thematic at the Hong Kong conference was all things AI. But today I'm going to be talking about all things EVs and where VinFast is leading the charge in our home market. So VinFast is the first vertically integrated EV manufacturer from Southeast Asia. It was founded in 2017 as part of Vin Group, which is the largest private conglomerate in Vietnam. You guys may or may not be aware, but Vietnam is one of the fastest growing emerging markets in the world. And VinFast is right smack in the center of this fast growing economy where you're seeing consumption really growing and the country fast industrializing up the value chain. So VinFast makes EVs, electric two-wheelers, and electric buses. We started EV production in 2021 and already have a global presence. We have 12 EVs, 3 factories, and over 390 showrooms globally. Our manufacturing capacity at the end of August of this year was 550,000, and we're going to be at 600,000 by the end of the year. Last year, we delivered 97,000 EVs, and that was mainly in Vietnam. And this year, we are on track to at least double our deliveries, and we expect the international market to account for more than 10% of our deliveries this year. Our core focus markets internationally are in Asia, so that's Indonesia, Philippines, and India. Also emerging markets where the socioeconomic conditions are pretty similar in Vietnam. You've got young population, high two-wheeler population that's looking to convert to four-wheelers, and VinFast is at the heart of it, delivering affordable EVs for emerging market consumers.
Super helpful. And one thing that stood out was you said 12 vehicles. Like, the
Yes,
range is
12
very
EVs.
unique, correct? Going
Yes.
from the two-wheeler little bike to the bus.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about why you all basically started out with this broad range when some of
Yeah.
the other players, start with one and then scale from there.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Katie. Unlike some of our Western counterparts, it was really by design to have this broad portfolio from the very beginning. So the company's actually front-loaded a lot of the R&D and the manufacturing capex required to roll out these products quickly. And the reason being is the company's mission is to serve every market need. We make small, affordable cars that are under 20,000 US dollars, and we also make like large SUVs in the E segment that's like 50,000 US dollars. And that's just for the electric four-wheelers, right? We also have a whole range of two-wheeler motorbikes that's only sold in Vietnam currently, and then electric buses. So actually our entire product portfolio is much broader than just the 12 cars I mentioned. And like I said, this broad product portfolio gives us the flexibility to be nimble and to enter markets quickly.
I had a quick follow-up, if I may,
Yeah, get in there,
given
Mark.
that range. The opportunity in Asia, obviously, and you mentioned your Amandae, the company's footprint in India as well. One of the
Yeah.
big things in India I've been tracking is the tremendous growth of EV on the three-wheeler market, the rickshaws, etc. And I know that's big in
Yeah.
Vietnam and Asia, etc. And that by itself is a very big segment in all these markets, it feels like. And one of the big issues in India, in Delhi, etc., I was there recently, has been the charging infrastructure. The question of charging infrastructure for all EVs, regular cars, is an issue around the world, and Asia has been running pretty fast. But then there seems to be an issue on charging infrastructure for the smaller, the three-wheelers, because it's catering to a specific category. I'm curious, given your company's big footprint in all of these, how you look at the charging side of things
Yeah.
for these two components, and then also just more color on the India piece, if that's one of the big segments you're focused on. Thank you.
Sure. So what's unique about VinFast and our go-to-market strategy is our founder, who owns the largest private conglomerate in Vietnam. He started his own charging company called V-Green. This is a separate entity from VinFast. And basically, V-Green has built a network of over 90,000 charging points in
Wow.
Vietnam alone. And we've
Wow.
been able to do that because of the conglomerate's footprint, right? Whenever you go to a Vin Group or Vin Homes real estate property, whether it's a shopping mall, an office, or residential, you see these charging stations everywhere. So charging is not a problem in Vietnam. But when you go outside Vietnam, this is an issue. So V-Green has entered these markets also. They've been set up in Indonesia and India, and in the Philippines, and they work with local partnerships, adopting a franchise model. For example, in the Philippines, we work with Manila Electric Power, which is the public utility, to set up, to co-invest and build out these charging infrastructure stations. Yes, that's a great example of a V-Green charging station. So we recognize that the pain points, what are the pain points to EV adoption? And how are we solving it that's different from what's being done in North America? For us, we recognize range anxiety is one of them. You have to address that by building out the charging infrastructure, right? I think what people don't realize is Vietnam has one of the highest EV adoptions in the world. It's 30%, right? China is at over 50%, Vietnam at 30%. It surprises people because Vietnam is still a very large motorbike market, right? And the markets that we have chosen to enter in, it's still largely a two-wheeler market, right? But as consumption, as GDP per capita moves up that curve, consumers want to adopt four-wheelers, but they also still want it to be at an affordable price point. They also want to know that they can charge the car, and they want to know that it's good after-sales service. So that's the point on charging. India is a very exciting market for us. It's a very competitive market, but we are committed to it for the long term. We just inaugurated our CKD facility in Tamil Nadu in August, and we started pre-bookings for the VF6 and VF7 in July of this year. So we expect to make our first deliveries sometime in Q3. The Indian government, is very committed to driving manufacturing in the country. They also want to spur green transportation adoption because, as I think a lot of us know, India is one of the most polluted cities in the world, same as Vietnam. And so you really need to move the country away from the heavy polluting sectors to green transportation. And so the Indian government has been very giving incentives for manufacturers like VinFast to build a CKD facility and to build those cars and sell in India.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to, Amanda, let's talk about Vingroup for a second, because this is a really interesting kind of advantage you guys have of the setup within a broader conglomerate. You mentioned the charging stations. What are some of the other business units or components of Vingroup that are kind of augmenting the vertical integration? I'm curious, sort of, backing by this larger company to date. Are they still backing you guys currently? How does that funding look?
Sure. So right from day one, VinFast has been backed by Vin Group and our founder, Mr. Veng, and they still continue to fund us today. We listed in the US market via a SPAC 2 years ago, but we still remain largely funded by our chairman and the parent company. Within Vin Group, it has 5 key pillars. Industrials and tech is one of them. There's actually a few other companies within the group like Vin AI and Vin Big Data that where basically they create the software that's being used in the VinFast cars. That's one advantage, right? So it's a lot of like intercompany synergies there. And then in terms of, I talked about the charging, we also have a sister company that's actually a pure EV taxi fleet company. It's called Green Smart Mobility. And GSM really serves as sort of like a marketing tool for VinFast because when you think about going back to the starting point, how do you drive EV adoption? First, consumers need to know what it feels like to ride in an EV car. They need to trust the experience. It's not too different from sitting in a gasoline car. Some would say it's even better experience because it's not as noisy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have to address the pain point about charging. So whenever VinFast enters a new market, you can expect that GSM and VGreen will also follow in tandem. So how does the relationship between VinFast and GSM work? In the earlier days, majority of our deliveries went to this related taxi company. We call that we disclosed that in our 6K. And in early days, it was 70% of our deliveries went to GSM. Today, that is 20%. So you can see that the direct-to-consumer sales has grown very quickly as the awareness about EVs spread amongst Vietnamese consumers. And that's a similar thing they were doing in Jakarta and Manila and soon in India. So if you visit any of these EM cities today, you get a chance to ride in a pure EV taxi fleet. I don't think there are many pure EV taxi companies in the world. So it's exciting to see the entire green mobility ecosystem driving that change in consumer habits.
Very cool. Michael, are you going to jump in?
Yeah, I just had
you have that pensive look on your face when you're about to say something very smart.
This is so fascinating with so many tangents here. But I just wanted to touch on just get a clarity because of the range of the product line and the countries is the manufacturing strategy for the company across all these categories, factories and so on, and then the battery piece of it because there's a lot of changes going on the battery side of the equation. How vertically integrated or horizontally distributed is Vin's strategy on that front would be useful to understand.
Sure. So we are a vertically integrated company. We source our batteries externally from 2 major suppliers, and we actually have a joint venture with one of them where we import the cells to Vietnam, but then we do the battery pack in Vietnam. Right now, outside of the India facility, the 2 other factories are in Vietnam. So we make everything in Vietnam. We have up to 70% localization.
Wow.
For our components. Vietnam has a very broad supply chain that's already in existence. And on our main flagship facility in North Vietnam, in Hai Phong, we actually have suppliers on site within the factory itself. So that makes it very easy from a logistics standpoint. We make some of the key components like the power motors, the EDU units in-house ourselves too.
Got it.
One more for you, Amanda, before we let you go. Question on just scaling this next phase of the business. You mentioned the advantages of having Vin Group's support throughout the journey. Obviously, you're opening new plants. You think you should do doubling the shipments and going to market. Obviously, costs money. You have sales and marketing. So, how do you think about realizing the potential that you see in some of these key markets? Balancing that with a path to profitability. How are you guys thinking about that?
So one of the things that we did at the end of 2023 was to begin our pivot to a third-party dealership model. When we started, we had a direct consumer showrooms, and now 99% of our showrooms are all in third-party dealerships. So that has really brought down our SG&A costs as a percentage of sales. That's now down to under 15% from over 40% a year ago. We are doing cost optimization on the operating expense side while anticipating that for this year and next year, we still need to invest in CapEx for the new factories and also to upgrade our vehicle platform and our EE architecture. So we are still very much in the growth phase that requires these necessary investments to build a competitive product and also to ensure that we have the right manufacturing footprint to take advantage of the local market incentives. The longer term plan is for profitability, but we have the advantage right now where we see this opportunity. We're in the right markets. We need to make sure we're delivering the right products and taking advantage of the incentives that are provided to bring this manufacturing to these countries. So we're making progress. I mentioned that our target is to at least double our deliveries this year, and we've maintained that guidance as of our last earnings call.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, given the many parts of the company, the top-down financing by your chairman and founder, and you mentioned the SPAC in the US, that's, I think, ticker VFS, just for the purposes of the StockTwits community, et cetera. We're tracking how to look at the VinFast piece of it. If you could just summarize, is it VFS here? Is it other entities in Asia that, if we wanted to follow the company and the various stocks, how should we be thinking about it?
Yeah, so definitely follow VFS US. That is the VinFast. That is the VinFast ticker. And when you track our story, look out for our delivery numbers. Look out for the commentary that we're putting out about international expansion, and also how we're doing in terms of our cost discipline. So I'll say these are the three things to track. We're really giving investors exposure to emerging market growth for EV adoption.
Absolutely. And in multiple countries. I love it.
Yeah.
And it's just great that it's independent of China, which obviously has its own elements and issues, as you pointed out, in terms of, this is a very interesting way to be, Vietnam, Indonesia, India, all of these places, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I would like to highlight that we are the number one automaker in Vietnam. We surpassed the legacy OEMs, which are mainly the Japanese brands. And for the first half of this year, we've already delivered more than the number 2 and number 3 OEM in Vietnam combined. So this gives you a sense of our rapid growth and also the dominant market share that we have.
Fascinating insights into EV, and we follow EV here in the US. Very different trajectory. We hear about China. This is a whole new dimension. So, Amanda, really appreciate you coming on and telling some of the story with our retail investors. And you'll have to come back when you have some more updates.
Would love to. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Great to see you. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, I haven't seen forever, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I don't even know where to start.
A few things.
Like sometimes when I see a headline, I'm like, I wonder what Michael thinks. One of them was the Google antitrust decision that was made. Curious, I think I saw you. I haven't gotten a chance to read your full take, but curious your thoughts on that big decision. Of course, there was some concerns they were going to need to break up components of their business. That wasn't the case. What do you make of that?
No, it's a very important piece of news over the last couple of weeks. It's been years in the making. People have been talking about the remedies phase of this trial for Google for a very long time. We've known that, at stake for Google, it's these things, the spectrum of possibilities. On the worst case side, they would be forced to spin out Chrome, which would be very, very negative for Google's core search business because they get a huge amount of traffic and data through there. You already had companies like OpenAI say, hey, judge, if you guys decide that Chrome should be spun out, we want to potentially buy it. And there were people lining up. You had even Perplexity, which has a $14 billion cap, said, yeah, we'll maybe make a $34 billion bid for it from a PR point of view. So it had been anticipated. And the decision, as we know, it couldn't have gone better for Google. I mean, the judge basically said there was transgression on the antitrust side here, that Google was at fault. At the same time, a judge also said, but ironically, because of AI, which has been viewed as the number one threat to Google, we don't need to go make Google do all these bad things for Google, because AI is going to help compete, and everyone's investing in AI. And so Google, you're okay. So you go ahead and make your search deals, but just open it up a little bit. So that means they can continue to do stuff with Apple. And Apple now, logically, it's the rumblings are they're going to do a deal with Gemini and put Gemini into the next versions of all their platforms. and expand their deal. Apple gets paid over $20 billion a year, and that'll probably go higher. That is in contrast, just in the weeds a little bit, because this is important to kind of note. Anthropic was the other company that Apple was talking to on partnering on the AI side, in addition to the deal they already have with ChatGPT from OpenAI. Anthropic wanted $1.5 billion paid to them. Now, with this ruling from the judge, Google can continue to pay Apple, and Apple can get one of the best AIs out there. So Google gets the freedom on the AI side and the Chrome side, distribution deals, etc., for search, etc. So that's a great win. Second thing is they absolutely also get the flexibility to do search their way in terms of and compete with all of the AI companies. And then the last thing is, the only thing they are asked to do is to share some of their search results and so on to competitors. And as you'd expect, they'll fight that, negotiate that, and make it go as long as possible. So you can see it in the market. Stock was up, has been up, Apple's been up, etc. So good news on that front. And it takes a big legal thing off the table on the AI side going forward. And so basically it means that going into the next 2 years, all of the big companies and the small companies will compete more aggressively than before.
Fascinating decision. In many ways, felt almost like a sympathy vote. I know there was, like you said, rationale, but to your like, things are moving so quickly. This case was first kicked up, I want to say, a couple years ago.
Yes.
And at that time, Google is the big bad dominant monopoly. And since then, all of these negative headlines have made people question Google's ability to continue to compete. And over the last few months, they've been like the underdog, and it just completely worked in their favor. So what I'm hearing for you is big winners, obviously Google, Apple. Potential losers, companies not as much of a winner, of Perplexity, Anthropic.
I wrote that if OpenAI was a public company, and at 500 billion, they plan to be public soon, it would have been down. OpenAI would have been down, 5%, or who can predict markets, but I'm just saying OpenAI would have been down, Perplexity would have been down. This was a little bit of a blow to a lot of the private companies that are trying to go in. But the public guys, the big guys, it was a victory for the bigger guys. And it wasn't expected to be this much of a sweep for Google. So that was the surprise.
Well, I'm curious about that. You've been following this closely. You know each of these companies very well. What did you think the outcome was going to be most likely before this happened?
I did not expect that Chrome would be spun off. There are so many technical and business and logistics and legal issues around that, etc. So in many ways, this is consistent with the way I thought this would go, that Google would get to keep Chrome. They would get to do the distribution deals on the search side with Apple or whoever, but there would be more restrictions on how they could do it, how they had to open up stuff. And the surprise for me was that the judge basically said that yes, Google shares some of the search data piece, but Meta didn't go the extra miles on additional restrictions on Google in each of these categories. It was relatively open. There were requirements that, hey, come back and I'm going to take a look in a few months and see what you're doing and check you're okay. But until you do that, I'm going to let you have flexibility. So that was the surprise, that, and the biggest surprise was the judge in the decision. I read it several times, saying, one of the reasons I'm not coming down hard on this, or harder on this, is AI. AI is providing a lot of the competition to Google that we don't, the need for the legislative side of things is, as a result, reduced because of that. And so the thing that was dogging Google for all these months ended up being a positive in this irony. And as a result, Google right now is obviously all-time highs there. And I said 2.5 years ago that AI was going to be a big tailwind for Google. They had every opportunity to continue to be the top dog. And all of this, from a surprise point of view, no, I'm surprised at how much more runway they've gotten, and so the surprise is on the upside from my
Yeah.
perspective.
And interesting too. You mentioned the PR move for some of these smaller companies to make at least talk about bids for the brow. I wonder if that backfired on them a little bit because those statements are coming from a position of strength, and they're only able to do that if they are competitive with Google. Like, I wonder what the logic was in that.
Yeah, it's as the old saying goes, no PR is bad, no publicity is bad publicity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are in a world where, especially in technology, PR is a much bigger chunk of this stuff. And not to switch gears here, but Tesla, Elon, after multiple defeats on getting big compensation, hundreds of billions of dollars from his Tesla board, the Tesla board filed again that we want to give not just a few $100 billion, Judge. We want to give him $1 trillion worth of stock over the next 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's a PR thing. So, as an example to your question, because the chances of that are relatively low that Elon gets $1 trillion worth of stock for a whole bunch of reasons. But specifically, also, there's targets in the Tesla price. It needs to be an $8 trillion company from the 1 trillion to for him to get some of it. But that's not the point. The point is it's PR. The point is you look at the newspaper articles. They're all about, hey, is Elon going to be the world's first trillionaire?
Yep.
And so and the media will use this, and this is oxygen, and it will be so. PR is a huge piece of the world. Meta's doing the same thing. Google's doing it little less. Apple doesn't do this PR thing that much at all. Everyone is learning the lesson. And so, just as a broad answer to your question, yes, the PR piece is a big piece. So even though OpenAI did not get the Chrome, they didn't expect to, right? But guess what? They are in the dialogue about the AI browsers and the AI, and because the browsers, which is the key application that 5 billion people use every day to get on the internet and now do AI, are the key gateway for AI. So it's a big battlefront that's coming. It's been this year. Perplexity has their Comet browser. OpenAI will have an AI browser soon. So having PR out there that they're interested, etc., is a plus. So even if they quote lose against Google on this thing, it's a victory because more people know now in general that, hey, OpenAI is going to do something in browsers. Yeah. And then just last thing on the AI browser thing, right after the Google decision, Atlassian announced that they're going to pay $610 million for the browser company, which was a small company. They have a Dia browser. I've written a lot about it, tons of detail. We've got demos, etc. And they bought for 610. It was a uptick from the 550. And my point is, AI browsers is the next hot thing for the next 12, 18 months. And now this is going to be part of the dialogue. Everyone who wants to be in the discussion is in the discussion. So getting PR is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah. I mean, I want to stay on the Atlassian deal because that, to me, I don't follow Atlassian. It was out of left field. Atlassian, if you worked in tech, there's our opening bell. They're known for the Jira sort of project management system that engineers use.
Love Jira. Yep.
Yeah. Very functional, non-flashy, I want to say, business. If you didn't understand how these things work and you looked at the product, you'd kind of be like, huh? And it's a huge company. And OpenAI and Perplexity were also looking at the browser company. Meanwhile, the browser company, which I want to say it's based in New York. I could be wrong.
East Coast, yes.
Yeah. So the narrative on those guys prior to this announcement was really cool product, beautiful branding. Nobody uses it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of, I remember reading a few months ago, people are like, what? I can't believe, they're like left for dead, basically. Oh, they built this awesome thing. No one even uses it. And now they got a pretty nice acquisition out of it. I'm curious because that caught my mind going like, what are some of these other browsers that just struggled to get traction that now could be facing a much more positive fate? Do you know of it? Like, I know there's like the Brave browser, which is ad free. I don't know if they have the AI functionality. What are the other ones likely to potentially get scooped up? Or do you think an OpenAI and Perplexity will build versus buy?
Great question, and I think there's going to be combinations of all of those. You mentioned Brave. There are over half a dozen companies that are doing different types of browsers, both traditional browsers and then now AI browsers. That's a big new category. Browser company, which you mentioned, which got bought, has been around for 5 years. I've been tracking it from the beginning. They don't have a huge number of users, but they have very devout users of their Arc browser. So they've had a browser for a while. And it's very innovative. A lot of people love it. But then a year ago, they said, we're going to not improve that anymore. We're going to build this new thing called Dia. This $610 million acquisition was specifically for Dia because it's the AI part of the browser. So browsers are changing. And the two big browser companies are Google Chrome, which has 60-70% share globally with the Chrome browser around the world. And then Safari from Apple is the second one, right? Then the number 3 is falls way down to Microsoft. They have something called Edge, which is 2 or 3% share right over there. I'm going to tell you why I'm going through these numbers.
Yeah.
Then there's a company called Firefox, which we've all used for 10, 20 years. You may remember them. Mozilla, etc. So they are actually a big beneficiary of the Google decision, because 80% of the revenues are payments from Google to Firefox to keep running and doing their thing, because Google wants competition in the browser space. So the judges can say, oh, there is competition in the browser space. There isn't, but there, so all the smaller guys get to keep doing what they're doing. They all need to figure out the AI strategy. From an acquisition point of view, most of these other companies don't need to buy those companies, smaller companies, because the challenge is not the technology. You and I can start a browser company tomorrow, build it on the open source base of Chrome on Chromium, and we can have our own browser tomorrow. That's not hard.
Let's do it.
We can do it. You can do it. It's the Katy Perry browser. It'll be wonderful. But my point is that it's the distribution of the that's the key challenge.
Yeah.
And building that, and that's the big fight that's coming. It's like huge armies that are on both sides, and the small guys are all important, but they have to make sure they don't get trampled by the elephants, or they get to ride the elephants. And that's what Atlassian. Atlassian, you just made a great point. Jira, this is a $40+ billion company, $5 billion in revenues, over $1.5 billion in free cash flow. So buying this thing for $610 million is not a big deal. Why did they do it? Because browsers are also very important in the enterprise, and their core customers are millions of developers who use all the software tools from Jira to build products and talk about them to each other. So the teamwork around that. So the reason Atlassian, this makes sense for them to buy the browser company, is to create an enterprise version of the AI browser that folds into all these products that people can the programmers can talk and communicate each other. AI coding is the hottest area right now in AI today. You saw Google just buy Windsurf for over $2.5 billion. They snatched it from OpenAI. They were going to buy it for $3 billion. So AI coding is the big hot area. Anthropic has Claude Code. Cursor is the hottest, fastest growing enterprise software company. GitHub, Microsoft GitHub, and they're the last. Actually, ironically, they were the first one. They're now fallen behind. And my point is, all of these companies are going to need browsers. So Atlassian, what they're doing with the Dia browser, they're going to keep it separate, but they're going to integrate it into the enterprise workflow. So we're going to see from the Atlassian thing something a new category called an enterprise AI browser, which didn't exist. It basically is trying to race ahead of all the big guys finally getting their act together on Chrome and Safari, and try to bring huge amounts of AI functionality through the browser that help work teams and developer teams to be able to share code, do things together, etc. So that's the idea. Yeah. And OpenAI knows this, and they've got to make big moves on this very quickly. That's why they have a CEO of applications. There was some big news on that this week as well. I wrote a lot about that, etc. They reorganized their whole set of AI application teams and moved people around. So everyone is getting ready for, the summer's over, Labor Day is done, and we are in for a burst just a constant burst of news on all of this front, and AI browsers is the one of the big next fronts of
Yeah, so
competition.
many. It does feel like right after Labor Day, everyone was like, okay, back to business. I almost
Back
got
to business.
trampled by like a gaggle of 10 teenagers on the subway. I was like, oh
Oh
God,
no.
they're back in school. They're out in the streets. But Atlassian's always been an interesting company to me. That's the ticker team. And like
Yes.
people in tech know these guys, but they're not like one of these companies that's in the
They're
headlines
not
a
a
lot.
consumer.
They don't, but even just like they don't have controversial executives saying things. They're
No.
very low key, but their last big acquisition was 2023, and they bought Loom for almost $1 billion.
Correct.
Loom is sort of a video demo tool, so they are making moves. They have a ventures team, but I kind of like when these companies are just kind of like put their heads down, do their jobs, and every now and then they take a big swing. So they're an interesting one to watch, and maybe not one that's getting all the buzz all the time.
No, enterprise software typically is the area with the least sizzle,
Hmm.
typically, right? And that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, for instance, everyone knows Perplexity, right? On the AI search side of the equation, but fewer people know a company called Glean, Glean, also founded by an Indian guy with the name Arvind. So ironically, both companies are named, founders' names are Arvind.
Oh,
I did a post on this. But Glean is worth billions of dollars. It's in the enterprise space, but they do enterprise AI search.
mm,
So their products are basically bring you huge amounts of dedicated search in your business, put data together, et cetera, privately, et cetera. Now, most people don't care about it, but AI search is a big category, but there is now an enterprise
yeah,
component of that, which is Glean, and the consumer AI search component, which is for
yeah,
now Perplexity. And again, they're all getting ready for the big guys to come in. OpenAI is going to be coming in
yeah,
with search in a big way. And guess what? When OpenAI is in, they're going to do everything. They're going to do consumer, enterprise, etc. Microsoft's
yeah,
already playing in this with Edge, but they need help, which is why they're partnering with OpenAI. So very, very dynamic field.
yeah,
And they always look for the two segments, enterprise and consumer. Consumer always gets our collective attention. Enterprise typically is where the money is actually
yeah,
first. So, but it's always there, but it's less sizzle and less
yeah.
attention.
We talk a lot on the show just how some of these companies are just getting the attention of people who watch this program, retail investors, and I think of like a Palantir, an enterprise solution, but they got Alex Karp, and they have like a personality that is not enterprise, is quite consumer, and so some of these companies that's sort of they have that advantage. But then you have companies like Atlassian and many others that ServiceNow comes to mind. They're not as sort of out there in terms of their executives being consumer brands.
Totally.
So it's fascinating to see. But let's stick on retail investors for a bit because we had an S&P shakeup last week. Finally, Robinhood
Robinhood.
got put in. Also, AppLovin. So two, for different reasons, very popular stocks for retail investors. They'll be added on the 22nd. Uh, Ironically, Robinhood replaced Caesars Entertainment, was one of the ones that got bumped. So a lot of jokes about one
Same
gambling
thing.
experience for the other. Uh,
Correct.
SoFi, I think, was also in the mix. Didn't make it this time. What do you make of these two additions to the S&P 500?
No, I think both of them. First of all, hats off to each of them for the execution that they've done today to get where they are. Again, as you said, these businesses are hard enough to build as it is, but then to build the PR aspect of it and be ahead of that curve. So what Vlad has been doing and what StockTwits, Howard, you guys have been highlighting all of this, and is Robinhood has been front and center in terms of the whole stablecoin and the crypto aspects of equities trading coming in Europe, etc. So all of that is par for the course. But yeah, these are real companies, and they should be in the broad indices. So it's great to see these two make it in, and app loving. It's vibe coding is the big thing right
Mhm.
now, and we talk about we just talked about AI coding as being the white hot enterprise sector, and that the retail component, as it were, is going to be the rest of us being able to create apps, services, coding for one, etc. And so these are now established companies that should be part of an index that investors have to be able to participate on the passive side as well. So I think it's all move in the right direction.
The vibe coding, I feel like similar to the browser wars. I feel like you could have a whole. I would read an entire book if you were to write that on that topic because there's so much going on. Out of the vibe coding players we mentioned, we got Lovable, which continues to raise money. They're an interesting company, I believe, out of Copenhagen.
Yes.
I read a story. You're not allowed to wear shoes in their office, which sounds gross. Or maybe very clean, depending on how you look at it. But then, to your point, you have Microsoft, GitHub, you have Claude, all these companies popping up. Who do you think would be the first pure? Do you think there'll be a pure play vibe coding platform to IPO in the next couple of years? Is that a reality, or do you think they'll get absorbed within some of these other big tech players?
Either one is possible in terms of a pure play on vibe coding. However, vibe coding, as exciting as it is to talk about, and obviously it's allowed a lot more both traditional coders and non-coders to experiment with coding, because yes, you can now use these tools to talk and assemble apps and so on through just voice, with knowing far less about programming and coding. That's a good thing, and I play around with this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And the reality is that it's still coding. You still need to
Yeah.
to really do things with the code. You need a lot more coding. So
Yep.
I think in the next 12, 18 months, this will blend more than be separate.
Yeah.
So yes, there may be one or two companies that create a presence on the vibe coding side purely, but then they have to do a heck of a lot more work to build a lot deeper automated coding systems in their product, which is very hard to do. And
Yeah.
so I think the more likely scenario is that existing coding companies will just incorporate features in their apps that allow you to do more vibe coding than the other
Yeah.
way around.
It is fascinating, like zooming out a bit, all the conversation around these, Gen AI tools. Is it going to replace human thought? Are we just going to become these,
Mm-hmm.
type? And what I've found in using the tools, the more sophisticated you get using them, the more they educate you. And I've been playing
Totally.
around with Anything, which is a vibe coding tool. They just raised, I think, like $10 million. But I'm noticing the way it engages me when I'm trying to tell it what I want. I'm learning about how front end, back end, integrations, it's exposing how much I don't know. And that's what I find even with the Gen AI tools. When I'm really using them correctly, it exposes what I don't know and invites me to learn more. So I think you're right in the vibe coding space. When I'm playing with it, I could get something, prototypical. I can get something out there for certain purposes. It does expose to me though. I'm learning. I understand way more about how apps are built now that I've been using it, which is sort of the irony around a lot of the conversations about these tools. I'm curious if you have thoughts around, are we risking losing our ability to think, or are we just not using them correctly?
No. This business of, hey, AI is going to make us dumber, our kids, because they're not going to need to read books, and because they can just chat GPT everything, just at that spectrum to the coding
Yeah.
side. No, this stuff allows us to do more people to do more complex things, as the less complicated things of what is today complicated gets simpler.
Mhm.
So it expands the pie. We have seen this every single time in every technology, etc. So this notion that all of a sudden we will do less, I remember very vividly, I'm a little older than you, when calculators came, people said, oh my God,
Yeah.
people are not going to learn how to do math. When spreadsheets came, I mean, VisiCalc was the first killer
Yeah.
app of the PC industry in the 78, 79. Excel came from Microsoft in 85. And you talk about vibe coding. I mean, today, most of us do macros on Excel, like complicated ones. We don't think of that as a very complicated programming exercise, but that is the original vibe coding,
Yep. Yeah.
where we created
is.
macros to do all these complicated
Yep.
calculations for us. But so it was a mixture of easier to use tools and then very difficult calculation tools. It helped us. It expanded the pie. So no, my 2 cents would be that the programming things we're talking about today, no, it expands the whole thing. We're going to need more programmers we're going to need, and also it will broaden the market for people like you and I to do more of these things and do more interesting things, because we're doing it for smaller markets, typically ourselves and our small teams. We don't need to buy an all you can eat product and then
Yeah.
try and customize it for our specific needs. So I think this is all
Yeah.
good. It's vibe coding. It's a great term, and
Yeah. Great marketing.
yeah, and Andre Karpathy, hats off to him. He was the former head of Tesla AI. And by the way, he's someone who's on the bleeding edge, and he's a programmer. So
Yeah.
he's a very good person to follow
Yeah.
on all this.
Well, on the Excel point, I just saw, I think this weekend, Microsoft's going to add a feature where you can describe basically the formula you want and it'll write it for you.
Correct.
And
Exactly.
I think that's understanding the concept of how to use the tool and describe it is the important strategic thing. Memorizing the equals parentheses, that's feasible. I mean, it's not easy to do, but it's the concept understanding is more important. So if you can reduce the friction to getting the concept to the execution, to your point, and more people can do more things, more complex fashion without knowing how to do a pivot table necessarily, which I
The
know.
more we can get our computers, hardware and software, to do the mundane stuff, take the what's the fancy word is, take the cognitive load from humans off their plate and do the things for them. Build the macros through voice, right? Do this, and so I don't have to learn how to do this myself, which I had to do. But for 25 years, that was the only way to do it.
Yep.
Now, if the computers that have immensely more computation power than my human brain does, why shouldn't it do that more?
Yeah.
But then it frees up my brain to do lots of other things that I can build on top of that with all that stuff.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. I feel like every week there's some study coming out that's saying we're all getting dumber. I've always felt like the tools have made me more. I feel like I've learned way more in the past 2 years than years prior. So maybe it's in how you're using them, but that'll be an ongoing debate.
Look, new technology, it will always causes ebbs and flows. So the data will always show that, yes, we're theoretically get a little bit dumber. You mentioned this business of, look, we've had 25 years of social media. There is data that, our kids and older people, we're reading less. We're reading books with shorter sentences. Our articles are more compressed. Our attention spans are far truncated. That is all true. Those are the ebbs. Those are the negative things that, when we're all doom scrolling an hour or two a day versus 15 years ago, we were watching 7 hours of TV per day. That was the average number in an household. Now we're doom scrolling an hour and two, whether it's Reels or TikTok or whatever. And those are the ebbs in the impact on society. The flow of it is that we are consuming a lot more information on topics that we are interested in, because the algos are serving us things we care about. And hopefully we are getting smarter on the things we care about, not just entertainment, that allow us to then go down bigger rabbit holes and become smarter and expand the pie. So it doesn't all make us dumber. I think it makes us smarter in the long term and more productive. And that's the promise of this stuff. But in the meantime, it's not in a straight line. So there'll always be stuff that's not good for us. And that is an issue. And we should just be aware of it. In that way, I'll just add one more thing, which is, it's no like, when fast food and processed foods came, we all said, oh, now we can have foods that can last for longer and cheaper and all that. It's wonderful, but if you eat too much of it, it's bad for you, because it's got this and that and the other and so on. So just like in food, everything in moderation, same thing with technology. Don't overdo these tools. Make sure you monitor your habits and move accordingly. But there is a downside to this stuff. Yes.
Yeah, there's layers to it. It's not as simple as a headline, even though, to your point, that's all we seem to be able to pay attention to, some of us. Speaking of headlines, let's check in on the state of the markets today. The S&P 500 is rising to start the week. NASDAQ up slightly as well. We have some key inflation data coming later this week. We have the big Fed meeting next week. Some earnings on deck of note for this week. We've got Oracle later in the week. We've got Adobe. We've got GameStop. I'm sure a lot of people here fascinated to hear from them. What is next for that popular company? So we'll obviously be covering all of those here. We also have this big Apple event, Michael, and I'm curious. what your take is here, because I know there's a lot of pressure on them to wow. And it used to be they could add some fun new features on the iPhone, and everyone's like, cool, awesome. What do you think? Do you think they're gonna kind of surprise anybody at this event? Or is it gonna be a run of the mill Apple event and they have their heads down working towards whatever's next?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think, look, Apple, is the consensus on Apple over the last year or two, as you said, they're behind in AI. I've been very vocal. I think they're far from behind. I think the opportunity for them is barely getting started, and it's not quite here. And part of the reason is the AIs are coming their way. 2 years ago, everyone said train your own AI. Now, Apple can and is partnering with for three, four, five, six AI companies and getting paid for it. That's a win.
Hmm.
They didn't need to build their own. Because why? Because they have 2.5 billion people using their platforms around the world. Everyone wants to be included in that from a distribution point of view, and that's not going to change. Now, in terms of the tomorrow, they're going to have updated phones, updated computers, updated iPads, updated There's AirPod 3s that are being talked about. There's even a Vision Pro that'll be updated with a little better strap. Um, but nothing in there that and most of this has been leaked, so we can track it. But there's nothing in there that say, oh, this is going to change the game. The time to change the game for anybody today is actually not as easy to do
Hmm.
today because of this scale and this complexity of the AI technologies and what has to be done and delivered to billions of people at the same time. So don't expect big surprises is the core thing, but also don't overlook what Apple will do. They will have Every device they have will have a lot more memory. Why is that important? Because that
Mm.
memory is what enables local AI apps to run. It's a very subtle thing under the radar. No one cares. But without that, millions of developers can't actually deliver the AI apps because you need more memory. And AI changed the base memory on devices. And 2 years ago, the base Apple device or a phone or smartphone from Android, from Google or Samsung, 8 GB of RAM. Today, that is 16 gigabytes of RAM. The most recent Pixel phones that Google just announced a week ago, 2 weeks ago, are allocating 3 gigs of that 16 gigs to AI applications. And
Mm.
why is that important? Because that means once as a developer, I know that iPhones and Google Pixels will have extra memory that I need. I will build the apps. I'll do more vibe coding. I will
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
I will build all these apps and hopefully sell them for $1, $2, $3, $5, $10 a month or whatever, and get traction that way. So it's a platform. So Apple is setting a platform, and so yeah, it's not going to be an overnight success thing, but in a year we'll see that, oh, Apple now has more AI apps by developers on its platform versus Android over there, because Android
Ah.
is more fragmented. That's the battle. So Apple knows that, and they're executing to that. And so yeah, I think it's going to be a very exciting array of devices, and but it's not earth shattering in terms of it'll be all of a sudden the AI does something great. The
Yeah.
other thing is the media is just very focused on, hey, Apple's late on Siri, and they are an AI-enabled Siri, but they have now put another flag in the sand and said we will have an AI-enabled Siri by 2026. So they put a
Okay.
date on it. So that's next year's business, and everyone will say, "Oh, well, that's so late. It's so behind," and they're not, because I can't do Siri kind of stuff with AI on most of the other platforms either. I
Right.
can do a little bit of that on Google Gemini. I can do it on OpenAI, but I can do all of those things. I have to run them as apps on my
Yeah.
iPhone. So those guys do not get to pass around Apple. They have to go through Apple,
Hmm.
and that always keep that in mind.
Great insight. Don't just look at the AI flash, look at what's enabling the AI flash, which is less exciting. The RAM, like what these things can do. I think that's a really good um, point. And one more tech headline, I guess, Apple adjacent. We got some news today that Dan Ives is joining 8Co Holdings as chairman. This is, of course, authentication and proof of human technology. So he's been a busy guy. There's no indication that he's leaving Wedbush, according to what's available now. So he'll continue to hold the role there. Um, but this is, of course, Sam Altman's company. It's an interesting move. I'm curious if I know you've probably crossed paths with Dan before.
Oh yeah.
What do you make of this one, Michael?
No, I think it's a very interesting move. AIDCO, it's this whole business of human authentication is a big nascent area. It's we're going to need to figure this out more than ever. There'll be lots of companies trying to figure this out in terms of various solutions. This is one. It's a more brute force method in terms of getting these gizmos out there so that everyone comes in and registers themselves, so there's identity. That's in the front door strategy, but there'll be other human authentication strategies that are orthogonal that will come from other tangents. So it's going to be a very competitive area. It's very early. I wish this, Sam is Sam, and he'll do some interesting things, and I'm glad Dan is adding his capabilities to this thing. And so, at the same time, I'm also intrigued by what Dan is doing in his other venture, which is this ETF on the thing, and trying to go up in the area with Kathy Wood and all of those people on AI and technology investing, etc. So yeah, he's got a lot of pies and a lot of fingers in those pies. It's exciting.
Lots going on, similar to his outfit choices. So if he's going to bring a pop of pastel to these emerging industries, I'm sure. So best of luck to him. We'll be following that. And I know we're coming up on the hour, but as a reminder, we got some earnings this week. We've got BLS data revision tomorrow. We've got CPI inflation data on Thursday. We've got the consumer sentiment data, which I think will be very interesting on Friday. You guys have been reading the business publications, lots written about middle class people feeling a little uneasy right now. We had the jobs numbers come in last week. That was a little worrisome. Reports out in Fast Company and Fortune about this new state of the job market where people are just holding on to their jobs for dear life. So a lot going on as we enter the fall. Michael, so awesome to have you back. I missed you this summer. I think I missed you the last time you were on. I was on vacation, but it's always great to see you. Remind people where they can follow and read your stuff.
Thank you, and it's always great to be back. I have a daily Substack on AI, michaelparekh.substack.com. It'll be, you can just Google Michael Parekh and you'll get it. And I'm also on Twitter, Parekh, Parekh, also known as X. So thank you for the opportunity again, and great to see you. And looks like you're having a good summer.
Yes, amazing.
And fall now.
Yes, we'll be back first thing tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. We'll see you then with some more headlines, and go Bills.
Awesome. Thank you.